is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou. That's Who. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. Got a lot to talk about on this week's edition, and we're going to get right into it. There's no dancing around. There's no sugarcoating. There's a lot to talk about. And I think, Gabe, the first question that I want to ask you is, what the hell was that?
It was not ideal. No. I mean, it was bad enough when it was 23-10. Because, like, to me, by that point, yeah, you felt like, okay, Missouri's going to win, but it seemed harder than it needed to be. And even if Missouri would have ended up winning like 30-10, which was about what I predicted, you would have kind of felt like, but still, it just didn't seem great. Well, then, honestly, they spent the last 10 minutes pretty much doing everything they could to lose the game. I mean, they just got, I think, fortunate that, you know, they made one play on fourth down on defense. They got the benefit of a call. I'm not saying it was the wrong call, but they got the benefit of a call that sometimes isn't made on third down, and they closed it out, and they deserve credit for that. So, like, you never want to crap too much on a win, but if there's a win that you can crap on, I think that one kind of qualifies.
That one falls in that category. Maggie, unconventional start to today's podcast. How are you doing? How are you feeling after that game?
I think that I'm at the point where if Desiree Reed-Francois schedules Middle Tennessee State ever again, I might lose my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that people kind of forget. I was talking to a friend about this, and I think people just forget that this is not like a one-time thing with them. I mean, obviously, I think people remember that we lost to them in 2016, that Odom lost to them in 2016. I think we lost by 5 or 6. Pinko beat them by 1 point. 1 point. And I know he was at the very beginning of his tenure whenever he lost to them, or whenever he beat them by 1 point. But these games are too close. No more. I'm done. I'm done playing them.
Didn't Middle Tennessee last year? They beat a pretty. I can't remember who they were. Miami. They beat Miami. I didn't know they beat a Power 5 team. Like, it's not like they have a. They also for beating them.
They also lost to Louisiana Tech last year, which Missouri ran off the field. So, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be the end of the world. There's still 10 weeks left. But like I said on Saturday night, the only thing you can judge them on is the evidence they've presented so far, right? And the evidence they've presented so far isn't very promising. Now, that doesn't mean that they are doomed to be awful. It just means that we are 1/6 of the way through the season, and what they have done so far does not give you reason to believe that they are, like, you're going on a lot of faith right now.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it. I know that this podcast might have a somber tone to it, right? Because admittedly, after that game, I was pretty hot. I was pretty hot about what I saw. I had to legitimately go outside and touch grass because, like, I had to go for a walk because I was like, what am I watching? This is incredibly frustrating in year 4 of the Drinkwitz experience, that we're seeing this in year 4. Gabe, I think you wrote a really good column on PowerMizzou.com. You guys should go read it if you haven't already. We can get into the coaching aspect of it and everything like that, and maybe that's where we go next. But I realize I didn't give very good context starting this podcast. I assume if you clicked on this podcast, you know what we're talking about. But as a podcast host myself, I feel like I need to go and clean that up. Obviously, Missouri wins. They beat Middle Tennessee 23-19 on a game that kicked off at 6 p.m., which, I don't know. There was always a weird feeling about that game for me. I don't know how you guys felt going into it, but I always had this lingering suspicion of a weird game was about to happen around me. But maybe that's just my paranoia always coming through when it comes to Missouri football. But anyhow, that's what happens. Brady Cook, 14-19, 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. Luther Burden had a career day in terms of receiving yardage, 8 receptions, 117 yards. Luther Burden still looked like him. That's a positive sign. Obviously, it looks like he is good. shocking analysis here from me. Luther Burden's good, but there were a lot of other things that overshadowed the good things in this podcast, Gabe. And I do want to start to talk about the coaching decisions, the lack of aggressiveness. I think you put it a really good way of the guy who was coaching this Missouri team against LSU in that COVID year, not the same guy coaching this team now.
Yeah, and I was joking on the first series. I mean, I called the first play. I said, I promise they're handing the ball off to Cody Schrader. And they handed the ball off to Cody Schrader. Then they handed the ball off to Cody Schrader again. And I know this comes off as like I'm against Cody Schrader, and that's not it. But Cody Schrader has 44 touches on this season. The next closest player is Luther Burden with 16. I mean, I don't
repeat that for dramatic effect. We repeat that again. I need you to repeat that.
Yeah, Cody Schrader, 44 touches. Luther Burden, I lied. I'm sorry. Nate Pete is second in touches. He has 25, and then Luther has 16. I think, and the point of my column was that I don't think that Eli starts games or starts seasons wanting to go into this turtle shell and be crazy conservative. But I think something happens once there's any sign of adversity or once things get a little tight, where that's what he does. I mean, Bill Connolly from ESPN tweeted out earlier today, Missouri has punted on 4th and 3 or less 5 times this season, somewhere between their own 40 and the opponent's 40. They have not attempted a 4th down yet this year. He gets incredibly conservative, and on one hand, you can defend it. His defense is like, if you're going to trust one side of this team, the defense is what you trust. Like, up 23-10, punting from the 44-yard line or whatever it was, that's probably not going to lose you the game. But neither is going for it and not getting it, right, in all likelihood. I mean, what to me says I trust my defense is, yeah, I'll just go for it on the 44. I trust you, so I need 28 more yards that they have to go. That actually tells me I don't really trust you.
Yep.
Does this, not being aggressive? Because we saw this last year, and then, he kind of turned it over a little bit, and we saw Bush Hampton, kind of calling more plays. And now we're kind of going back to a little bit more of the same stuff I feel like we saw a little bit earlier in the season. What is Kirby Moore doing? Is Kirby Moore doing anything?
I mean, I'm getting a lot of...
I'm on camera, but I don't know.
Right. I'm getting a lot of people that are asking who's calling plays. Look, I assume Kirby Moore is. I mean, I guess I could go to a press conference and say who's calling the plays, but he's the offensive coordinator. Drinkwitz told us he was going to call them. I assume he's calling them. I guess it's a story if he's not.
I think so, too. In the SEC Network, I think even in their broadcast mentioned Kirby was calling plays because they said that Drinkwitz doesn't have a pit in his stomach now when he goes to games. Which, by the way, for your guy who wants to call plays,
he did with about 4 minutes left on Saturday night. I bet. I know about 55,000 people there did.
Got a pit in my stomach every time I watch Mizzou play.
Yeah, I am. It's so wildly infuriating when you have Eli Drinkwitz in 2022 step up to the podium at SEC Media Day saying that he wants to cut it loose and be aggressive and be so aggressive that they're not going to they're going to be so different, and that is yet to happen. Since he did that last year, they weren't aggressive. This year, they're not aggressive. I thought I was taking crazy pills, Gabe. Maybe you can talk me down, but I thought I was taking crazy pills when Eli Drinkwitz said it was the right choice every time to do that. I understand trusting the defense. I get that, but I really want to reiterate what you said of trusting your defense. You have more trust in your defense if you don't get it there. I think that maybe his defense was tired. I don't know. I'm not on the sideline there. I don't know the vibe of the defense. But I feel like you can trust your defense a whole lot more if you don't get the single yard against a Conference USA team Let me repeat that. A single yard against a Conference USA team.
And to be fair, there is reason, given his offense, to not think he was going to get that single yard. But look, I said at the time I would have gone for it. I didn't even ask him the question. Somebody else asked him the question. And when he said what he said, like, hey, I respect him answering it. That's his call. I don't agree with it. And you know, we're all welcome to not agree with it. I think that, and this has changed some in football in the last 10 years ago, everybody punts that, or like 95% of people punt it. Sure. It's changed a lot with the availability of analytics and things like that. But I just think in the end, this comes down to a personality thing, right? I mean, I watched a game on Thursday night where one coach clearly just said, F it, threw everything to the wind, and ran a fake punt from his own 18-yard line. Now, he knows that's probably not the smart play, right? But he also knows, actually, I might have just as good a chance to get 2 yards here as I do stopping Patrick Mahomes from his 40-yard line. So maybe it's not that stupid, and maybe it sends a message to my team. And then I watched another coach in the same game who is a very good coach and understands a whole lot of things about football, but does not seem to understand that his best chance to get a yard or to win games is to put the ball in the player of that actual best hand, or best in the hands of the best player on the planet, right? So I think this is one area where it just becomes a personality thing. And a lot of coaches, I've said this forever, you got 4th and goal with the 1. Most coaches are running the football. And the reason, even if they wouldn't say it out loud, the reason they're doing it is when they go into the press room afterwards, if it didn't work, it's very easy to say, hey, if we can't get a yard, we don't deserve to win. No. It's a lot easier to explain that than, why were you in shotgun and rolled out and threw a pass when you only need 3 yards? Because then you become Pete Carroll in the Super Bowl, right? Then and I understand a lot of this is hindsight, which is why I want to be clear. It wasn't hindsight for me, and it wasn't hindsight for the people in the stands. They wanted him to go for it then. And is that why the game changed and Middle Tennessee then scored 9 points? Probably not. But you know what? If you get that yard, worst case scenario, you're taking another 2.5 minutes off the clock. Worst case. Okay, you don't gain another yard. Cool. You can punt 3 plays later. And then they have 7.5 minutes to beat you. You know, so, but there were a lot of other problems too. It was, he made the decision and then they did everything wrong for the next 9 minutes on both sides of the football.
Yeah, because they marched down the field regardless. I mean,
it took Middle Tennessee 4 plays to get back to the point where Missouri punted.
Right.
Yeah, that I do think that, Gabe, that's a good point you bring up, is that like everything after that seemed like it was just a domino of like, I know that it's not causation, right? Causation, correlation, 2 different things. But him going forward, it just seemed like everything that he was kind of like banking on happening, right? Of like, okay, I'll punt it. My defense will get a stop. We'll get the ball back. Good field position because we're going to flip the field. And then we'll be able to drive, maybe kick a field goal, get some more points on the board. That did not happen. Like that, everything that he was kind of planning on and hoping to happen did not happen. Now, granted, the defense, I thought, did play well. But like there's stress. You're putting unnecessary stress on that defense. And at that point, it's too much.
I think being able to close a game out is a skill.
Sure.
Right? Like it's not anything you can quantify, but Missouri doesn't do it very well, right? They didn't do it at Auburn. You know, frankly, they beat Vandy last year, but they didn't do it very well against Vandy. Couldn't do it against Georgia. Didn't really do it very well against Arkansas. So it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you're good at it, then you believe you're going to do it and you do it more. And if you're not good at it, every time you fail to do it, it adds a little more scar tissue. So, like, Missouri isn't letting Middle Tennessee drive 83 yards very often, but they did there. And then, like, in most cases, okay, you leave a linebacker completely unblocked. Okay, cool, he sacks Brady Cook. But how often is it Brady Cook rolls away from him, and the guy chases him down anyway, and then he fumbles the ball, and then it bounces out of the end zone for 2. I mean, it's like all these things add up, and part of you goes, well, that's bad luck. But then part of you also goes, when you continually have bad luck, like there's something about you that, and I'm not saying, I don't know whether it's nerves or coach. I don't know what it is, but I'm just throwing it out there as this is more than just like kind of coincidental at this point.
Yeah, a safety from the 16-yard line
it's tough.
That's a bad beat. I mean, that's a bad beat.
At least it wasn't a touchdown.
I mean,
He still wasn't a touchdown. The way the game was going.
If the ball bounces the other way, it's a touchdown.
yeah, and we lose.
And you're down 24-23. Yeah.
Trusting that offense, that really anemic might be dramatic, but an offense that wasn't really moving the ball a whole lot to go down to field goal range to trust a kicker who hasn't had the best start of the season to kick a field goal for you. Not a spot that you really wanted to be in. But the way, as I mentioned, Gabe, great point you bring that up. The ball did bounce out of bounds. Luckily, fortunately, that's probably the only fortunate thing that happened for Missouri in the last 9 minutes of game time.
And the pass interference.
That's true.
The defensive pass interference call. Those are the two. I mean,
my favorite part about the defensive pass interference call, and look, I don't know, I haven't watched the replay, but after the game, somebody asked Theo Weiss, like, what happened on that play? He goes, like, I don't know, I was looking for the ball. I mean, if somebody interferes with you, you're aware of it, aren't you?
I mean, it looked like once I saw
so.
He grabs you.
I didn't think so.
once I watched the replay, it didn't look like it was pass interference when the ball was close to him, but it was pass interference after 5 yards.
Right.
I mean, that's where it's,
To be fair, they're only in that situation because pass interference was called against Luther Burden, which I don't know. I didn't see it, but most people seem to think that wasn't much of a call.
I could see it. I could see the interpretation of the official having it, but I think that it was a weaker call. But I could definitely, I saw it and I was like, yeah, I can see that, but I don't know if you necessarily want to call it there. Make-up call might be a little bit too much.
Point is, though,
DPI, but yeah.
The point is you should not be in a position against Middle Tennessee State where a call determines the game. You just should.
In the fourth year of a coach that has recruited well, and I don't know. That's what is so frustrating to me. Is like, this is year 4. I don't think this should be happening in year 4.
Yeah, well, and I was struck by, and look, it could be a one-off. Like, people, the optimists among us are saying, do you remember when Missouri needed a miracle to beat San Diego State and then went on to win 10 games? Or do you remember when Missouri lost to Indiana? Now, I would argue Indiana is still not Middle Tennessee, but you get the point, right? So it can happen, right? Like, one-offs happen. And it truly, if they go out and beat Kansas State this weekend, then all this goes away. I mean, if they beat Kansas State, they beat Memphis, they beat Vandy, and they're 5-0 when LSU's coming here, then everything we're all saying right now looks like, well, why couldn't you have just waited 3 weeks? But that's not, I mean, again, all you can do is judge the evidence presented. And so far, it has been poor. And what was most telling to me, guys, I don't know if you watched the post-game press conference, if watched Eli's video at all, but that didn't seem like a coach who disagreed with a lot of the things we're saying right now. Like, for one, he wasn't real happy, and he seemed down was the best way I could describe it.
I want to get into the post game. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to get into the post game a little bit. But we got to take a break first, and I've got to tell you about our folks at HomeFieldApparel.com. If you're heading out to Faurot Field to watch the Tigers take on the Wildcats, make sure you're decked out in home field apparel. Go to HomeFieldApparel.com. Check out their great Mizzou selection of shirts. They've got all kinds of stuff out there, from baseball to basketball to football. A big football collection as well, and some general Mizzou stuff as well. So HomeFieldApparel.com, 15% off your first order with code KCSN23. We're going to go talk about that post-game press conference coming up right after.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Maggie, I want to get your thoughts on the post-game press conference. Give it to me. I want to know what you think.
Totally agree with Gabe. I felt like he was down. I think he did his best to kind of, he talked up Luther. I think who couldn't, still said he played well. He still said Brady played well based on paper, which, he did based on paper play well. it's so hard because we kind of talked about this a little bit before the show. It's like you still kind of want to support the guy and say things, but you still want the best player playing. Do we know who the best players are? I don't know. You want to trust the guys that are in charge. Do I trust Drink? I want to. I don't know. Like,
it's interesting how many people seem to have arrived at that same place in the last 48 hours. I mean, it's just observational, right? Like, because I mean, you guys know me well enough by now, and it's not emotional for me. It's
right.
I try to tell you what's happening, and I'll give you my opinion about what I think about it. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not very good, right? Like, I am accused of being Dennis Gates' agent and hating Eli Drinkwitz at the same time. It's neither one. It's neither one. It's just what I see. So, but there are a lot of people out there who, I mean, there are people who believed until the day he was fired that Kim Anderson was going to turn it around in Missouri, right? Like, you wear a Missouri shirt, I'm going to believe in you until you do not wear a Missouri shirt. A lot of people that have been pretty close to that, like, have gotten a lot closer to the middle in the last 48 hours. The approval rating, I would say, is as low as it's ever been right now.
I think so too. And for me personally, I want to see Drinkwitz do well, right? Like, I want to see him succeed at Missouri, but I think that I think what I struggle with too is he's seemingly recruited very well when it comes to the rankings, right? Recruiting rankings have been very positive, but the recruiting rankings don't matter once they hit campus. Recruiting rankings don't matter once they start playing the games on Saturday. I don't know. And I'm much in the same boat of Maggie, is just like, I don't know anymore. Like, the jury is out still on Eli Drinkwitz when it comes out, and that's probably not a great thing in year 4. Probably not
recruiting. I think the recruiting rankings, like, they usually matter, right? Which is what makes it more baffling in the cases that they don't, but they don't always matter. Bill Callahan recruited well at Nebraska, and he couldn't win. Butch Jones and Jeremy Pruitt recruited well at Tennessee, but they didn't win. Now, Butch did actually win 9 games and still got fired, but that's more on Tennessee than anything else. But, my point is, there are times, right? Like, if you just asked people who's a better recruiter, Eli Drinkwitz or Gary Pinkel, well, they would say Eli Drinkwitz. And, like, I've watched their teams play. That's kind of nonsensical, guys. So we are slaves to these rankings. And again, they usually are pretty accurate. It's very, very difficult to win if you're high-level stuff if you're not recruiting top 10, 15 classes. But there are sometimes exceptions. And what Missouri fans have to hope right now is that he's not one of the exceptions in the bad way.
I think also, and I hate to say this because I know we're going to have a lot of listeners that don't typically listen to our podcast this week. But, and especially because I also know that right now, K-State is playing great football. We all know that. Like, they won the Big 12 last year. We all watch football, a lot of football. We're very well aware that K-State is playing great football right now. But also, we're also well aware that the Big 12 is not the typical type of competition that Missouri plays.
Oh,
and
no.
I mean,
no. Here we go.
I know. But we do see that tip. I mean, yes, okay, we get to play Vandy. I get it. We do. There's other teams that we get to play that are probably not as good as Oklahoma has been in the past. Georgia has been as good as they have been in the past. I mean, but on a grand scale, I don't know if Gary Pinkel played. I think he did better in the Big 12 because I don't think the competition was as good in the Big 12 when we were in the Big 12 as the SEC, as what Drink is playing in the SEC, if that makes sense.
Here would be my counter to that.
Okay.
Middle Tennessee State plays in Conference USA.
No,
and that's
super fair.
right now.
Totally. Completely agree. I'm just saying based on what he's in the past 3-4 years of not being great.
Yeah.
It's not a shot at K-State at all. They're playing great football. They're a great team. Not saying that. But
the concerning part to me, and I put some of this on our site today, and most people found it eye-opening, and a few people think I hate the football coach, so we're fine with that. But is that the 2021 class was signed 3 years ago. Like, that's long enough to be on the field. It included, I believe it's 23 players. 16 of them are no longer on campus. 2 of them are starters, and 2 are in the rotation. So that's 4 out of 23. Now, look, Mekhi Wingo left, Dominic Lovett left. If they're still here, yes, it looks a little bit different. But that's still only 4 starters out of 23. Like, and you blame rivals if you want. Now, I always say, well, if the coaches miss half the time, I don't know why we wouldn't miss half the time. Like, they should be better at their jobs than we are. That's kind of the point. But blame whoever you want for it. But bottom line is, that's no longer the number 19 recruiting class in America. Like, that doesn't count anymore as that. You know, the 2022 class, it's too early to determine it. Because like some of those guys, hey, they're only in their second year. But you would like to see some of them getting on the field. And this goes back to the conservative nature. He just doesn't play young guys. He just doesn't play them. He brings them in, and we hype them up. And, I mean, like, Darius Jackson, cornerback. He started a couple games. Actually looked pretty good as a freshman. Went out and got transfers. And so you blocked that kid, and he leaves. Marcus Scott, true freshman, 4-star. I don't know if he was any good or not. He was hurt his first year. Went out, got Drayden Norwood, got Marcus Clark. Marcus Scott looks at him and goes, well, I don't know. They're bringing in guys that are older than me at my position. I'm out. And he's hesitant to put these guys on the field. And the comparison I made was, when you were 22 years old, every job you wanted to apply for said, needs 2 years of experience. Well, you don't have 2 years of experience. You're 22 years old. You just graduated from college. So how do you get 2 years of experience? Like, if everybody that's hiring needs 2 years of experience, how do you ever get to 2 years of experience if they won't hire you because you have 0 years of experience?
It's a great comparison there. And that's really it's something that I didn't really think about. I think that does go back to the aggressiveness, as you mentioned, of like bringing in guys that are highly touted, but then not being aggressive when it comes to play. What does Missouri have to lose by playing these guys? Nothing. I think they only gain experience. They only get better by playing the young guys they bring in that are highly touted recruits, guys who within the state want to see that. They want to see them playing for the university. That's something that I mean, when you look at the team, we talk about Eli Drinkwitz's recruiting and everything like that. You want to see those guys pan out, and a lot of the times, I think you bring up a good point with the 2021 class. Only having 4 starters out of there is wildly tough. He has tried to hit the transfer portal a little bit harder in years past, since the transfer portal really became relevant as soon as it came up. But one of those guys too is you mentioned Cody Schrader, and I found this really interesting after the game, Gabe, when you guys put up the snap counts and just the glaring difference between Nate Pete and Cody Schrader. And like you wrote here, Pete had 9 offensive touches for 100 yards, and it was on 11 total snaps, and didn't have a carry after halftime.
I was surprised. Did you guys realize that? Because I didn't realize that during.
I didn't realize that either. I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize
And but I did realize Tavoris Jones hadn't gotten on the field. Jamal Roberts hadn't gotten on the field. And if they're not getting on the field in those games, when are they getting on the field? And the problem now with the free transfer is, if Tavoris Jones doesn't play this year, why would he come back?
Right.
He's not coming back. Now, look, maybe they go, good. We don't want him back. He's not any good. Maybe that's the case. Like, you're making the argument kind of both ways here, right? I'm saying, like, you got to give other guys a chance, but also, like, you got to play your best players and win. But I'm not saying Tavorus Jones needs 60 snaps, but I'd like to see him get 6. I've got a hard time believing that's going to beat you. You have to. Konzo Martin fell into this trap in basketball. He brought in freshmen, and he's only going to play freshmen. It just, you got to earn your stripes, and you got to be here for a while and all that. And so, okay, Trey Jackson's gone, man, because he didn't get to play. And did Trey Jackson turn into an All-American? No, but like maybe it could have been good. We don't like. The point is, if you don't play him, then it's really hard to keep signing.
Yeah, and that makes sense. When you talk about that, and to kind of bring this back to the press conference and almost the defeated nature of it, which, as you mentioned, Gabe, is kind of odd when it comes to Eli Drinkwitz. And I think you made a really good point in your column as well, of saying, like, you really never know what you're going to get from an Eli Drinkwitz press conference, whether it's putting on a Darth Vader mask and doing a lightsaber, or he's going to make a soundbite or go off on step up on a soapbox and talk about conference realignment. You really never know. And I was kind of with you when I was reading it. You expect him to come up there and defend his team, being like, "Yep, well, good thing we won. We stuck this out. We won this game." Wasn't really like that. And I think that at that point, everyone else was kind of like, "Oh, wait, hang on, he didn't make fun of Middle Tennessee after the game? Like, what is he's actually worried?" Everyone started kind of looking around at each other, and I think that's kind of a red flag going into a game that has we joke about this a lot. I mean, we joke about it a lot. Like, every game seems to be billed as the biggest one of Eli Drinkwitz's tenure. The next game's always the biggest one. This one against Kansas State is pretty darn big. Our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook have the Kansas State Fighting Wildcats of Manhattan, Kansas, favored by 5 points in this game.
Because it opened at like 3.
It did. And I think at one point I saw it down to 1. And I think it got back up, obviously now at 5. I've seen it up at 5.5 as well for this game. But I'm going to take this opportunity I brought up DraftKings to talk about our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook, as football is back and is in full swing with another week of epic games. And who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? That is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody's missing out on the action this week, as all DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code KCSN to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. The crown is yours. I got to read the disclaimer, so I got to take a deep breath here. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available online for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. In Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdictions. Void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Okay, I got through it.
That reminds me, I got to go use a bonus bet.
True, better do it. 7 days after issuance.
No, I don't think I only have like 3 days left.
Let's talk about this Kansas State-Missouri matchup, because I think the vibe going into it from Missouri fans that I have gotten recently is not as strong as a vibe going into it maybe a week ago. Gabe, as you mentioned, you only have your most recent game to go back on. Vegas thinks this game's going to be close. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it'll be closer than a lot of people think, right? Like the cycle of a fan whose team didn't play as well as they want is, I would say, till about mid-afternoon Monday, so about when we're recording this. Well, we're never beating anybody again. We suck. This is over. Football's stupid, and I don't want to pay attention. Then, like Monday night, Tuesday morning, you're like, all right, I mean, we still suck, but I can see a way, right? Like it's sports. We're going to go ahead and play the game. Probably going to lose, but we got a shot. And Wednesday, I don't know, I'm looking at these matchups. They only led Troy like 13-0 in the second quarter. They left them some holes. I think we got a shot. And then by about Thursday night, it's, we're going to kill these dudes. Like, they're not even good. I don't know why they're making the trip. And then Saturday night, you're either proven right or you're right back to football stupid and we're never going to play again. But it's last week's bad. But I think you can. I don't expect Missouri to be that bad every week. And look, it is clear what this game means to this program. I mean, Brady Cook kind of addressed it after the game. I talked to people in the program over the summer, and they all knew. They said, man, like, we got to win the first. We're not paying attention to the first two, but those have to be wins. But that one's huge. And they know it. And that can go one of two ways, right? It can motivate you, or it maybe could psych you out, and you can go out and play like you did last year. And if that happens, boy, I'm glad I'm leaving the country a week after that if that happens.
I mean, you have to hope that last year's game is fresh in their minds, because there's no way that Luther Burden, Nate Pete, Cody Schrader, any of those guys, anyone on defense wants to go out and get blown out like they did last year. We were embarrassed as fans, especially, I was embarrassed as a fan. I went to Mizzou when we were in the Big 12, and we didn't lose to Mizzou, or we didn't lose to K-State once while I was at Mizzou. So I have a decent amount of K-State friends, or, I know people that went to K-State, and it's I would say a pretty good rivalry. I know a lot of people that live in K-State, live in Kansas City. It's KU, K-State, Mizzou, with a few Nebraska, Iowa people sprinkled in there. It was embarrassing. You don't want to go through that again, and I can only imagine what it's like for the players. It's got to be 10 times worse for the players. So you're hoping it's fresh in their minds.
Tucker, I'm going to give you an option here. Do you want me to make your job in your life harder for the next few days and make a comment, or should I just let it go?
Let's do it. Let's go.
All right. I also was embarrassed last year as a member of the media because there's a lot of cheering in that press box in Manhattan. I just want to throw that out there.
Interesting to note.
Gabe would never.
Interesting note. I do appreciate that. There shouldn't be a lack of motivation for the Missouri Tigers in this game. If there is, something is wrong fundamentally with how this team is structured.
Tell me if you guys agree with this. This game is the separator between still being able to have a good season, but the ability to have a really good season. You lose this game, I don't see a way you can have a really good season.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you're not winning. None of us picked us winning 9 games at all. I think we were sitting around 7-5, 8-4 before. That was before South Dakota. So if you win this game, you can definitely go 8-4, 9-3, somewhere around that, because K-State's a good team. So you could. It's possible.
You could.
And I would say that's a very good season for Mizzou right now.
The bar for very good to me is 8. 8 and above. And
Agree.
if you don't win this game, I don't see how you can get there.
No, definitely not. Agree.
Sorry, I got sidetracked looking at Memphis' schedule to see if, because all of a sudden now I'm just like, Memphis might be up in the air. That's not a bad football team. Gabe, you're right, 100%. This is the barrier between getting to a great season or just having an okay or good season. They can still have a good season and lose to K-State, right? We talked about that in the season preview. We've talked about that really all leading up to this season. I don't know, Gabe, I think you and I both picked this game as a loss at the beginning of the season just because of it all. I don't know if I feel any differently about that. I mean, you look at the Kansas State, the way they've performed the past couple of weeks, I think they stuttered out of the gate against Troy, and I thought, hang on, we got something here. Is this going to be Tulane this year? And it wasn't. They took care of business. They look good, and I don't think that necessarily when I say that I don't feel very confident in Missouri winning this game, it's not necessarily about Missouri. It's about, I think, how good K-State has looked in the couple weeks. Now, Missouri not looking good against Middle Tennessee certainly helps in that assessment. But mainly the way I look at it, I think that the Kansas State is just a better built football team.
I think K-State has done to bad teams, and I don't think Troy's a bad team.
No, I don't think so either.
K-State has done to lesser competition what a top 25 team should do to lesser competition, and what Missouri has not done to lesser competition. So, like, comparatively looking at the first 2 weeks, like, there's no reason anybody should pick Missouri to win this game. That also does not mean that Missouri can't win this game.
Right.
Yeah, when we talked about this before the season started, and, we kind of did a position by position comparison and kind of talked about, quarterback versus quarterback and offensive line versus offensive line and things like that. It's kind of funny how positions have, kind of changed. Obviously, their offensive line is still much better than our offensive line, but their offensive line is kind of plagued with injuries and is kind of looking a little bit, maybe not as good right now. I don't know if they're what's his last name? Is it Gaffey? Christian Gaffey? Is that his last name? It's their stud offensive lineman. I'm not sure if he's going to be back this week. I know he had been practicing. They have a similar running back room as we do. They have two, Trayshawn Ward and
DJ Giddens.
DJ Giddens. So they have a similar room to kind of ours. They kind of share they're pretty even in the amount of carries that they get. Will Howard's been playing great. I mean, he's definitely been playing, better than our quarterback. So
my concern, if I'm a Missouri fan going into this one, is K-State has been playing pretty good defense. Mm-hmm. Now again, they have not faced any great offenses. They will not have faced any great offenses after Saturday either. But they've given up 13 points in 2 games. I think they're giving up 2.9 yards a play or something like that, which means that you can run 3 straight plays. You're going to gain 8.7 yards. You're going to be in 4th and 1.3, and Missouri's going to punt every time in 4th and 1.3. We know that. We've established that on this podcast. So it's like they're going to have to play clearly their best game of the season. I don't know that they have to play perfect to beat K-State, but like it has to be at least like an A-, B+ type game to be. There's no way anything less than that is beating K-State, because K-State's not going to come in here and give it to you. I mean, that's not what Chris Kleiman's teams do. They're going to make you earn this win. Mm-hmm. And last year, like, I didn't think K-State was spectacular last year. It was like watching an old Bill Snyder team. It was like, well, we're just going to kind of cruise until you guys just kill yourselves. And Missouri obliged and killed themselves.
They really are just, I think also what it comes down to is, I do the college football show also here on KC Sports Network with Matt Lane, which I think we're planning on being in attendance to this game with Kansas State and Missouri. We'll both be on attendance. Matt's in from North Carolina, so we're going to be coming and watch this game because it's a huge game for the area. When you talk about it, but when we talk about picking games and we talk about college football and how we feel about matchups, it comes down to like 2 things, and it's coaching and it's quarterback play. I think a lot of the times you can really separate yourself with those 2 things. It's clear Kansas State has the edge in both of those. It's not wild for me to say that. I mean, Chris Kleiman, you look at that team, that is a very well-disciplined, well-coached football team. Been very impressed with what he's been able to do, but taking that from North Dakota State to a Division I program, to an FBS Power 5 program, and being able to kind of making that transition so seamless for Kansas State. And I know Missouri fans are probably sick of me talking positive about Kansas State, but I mean, that's what Missouri wanted with Eli Drinkwitz coming to Missouri, and it hasn't gotten done yet. And Gabe, you're making a good point. It's going to be Missouri's going to have to play very well. Like it's going to have to be a very good game for Missouri. I think some things are going to have to bounce their way that haven't bounced their way in the last few games, maybe last few years, to bounce their way. But it's going to have to be a very clean performance from. I almost said the Chiefs. It's going to need to be a clean performance from them too, from the Tigers. But I can't believe we've gone 45 minutes into this podcast and didn't really mention how kind of Swiss cheese that defensive line was against the conference, or that offensive line, I should say, was against the Conference USA defensive line. I was not very. I was encouraged after week 1 when it came to the Missouri offensive line. After week 2, not very encouraged. They've got a pretty stout defensive line for Kansas State too. The trenches might be where this thing is won ultimately.
Was last year.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
But look, Missouri. How long's Kleiman been at K-State? I don't know off the top of my head.
I think
5,
maybe 5 years.
I think he got there right before the year before COVID.
Okay,
yeah.
So this is year 5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Look, this is going to be the 30,000-foot casual Mizzou fan view of this. If you lose this game at home in year 4 to a guy that won a conference title in year 4, what are we doing? I mean, that's like, and again, I'm not saying he's getting fired Saturday night for losing this game. He's not. He could lose this game and absolutely save his job. But the casual fan view will be, well, there's a program that's passed us by. And I mean, it's hard. It's impossible to argue at this point that they have. Clearly they have.
Yeah.
But that is certainly discouraging for Missouri fans. And there's a million reasons that, man, this game could do him a whole lot of good if he can. And I'll pledge this, like if they win, I don't care. I'm not going to nitpick it. I'm not going to tell you, well, yeah, but no. All they got to do is win the game. Like, yeah. I don't care if it's 3-2 or 97-96. They got to find a way to have one more point.
That's it. That's all it's going to come down to. All right, let's wrap up this podcast. Let's pick it. Maggie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm going to take, sorry, Mizzou fans. I'm taking K-State in this one.
Maggie, you have a role to play here, and if you're not picking Mizzou,
I know, but I can't. It's like you said, all we can go all based off of is the last game that we watched. You know, if Mizzou can come out and beat K-State, my Memphis pick's gonna look a lot different. But I got to go based off of what I saw against Middle Tennessee. What I saw against Middle Tennessee isn't showing me that, it just shows me that K-State's going to blitz all night. And we're going to give up, more than 4 sacks, more than 7 tackles for a loss. It's going to be bad for Brady Cook. So I'm going to say K-State 34, Mizzou 24, or Mizzou 20. I think it's more than the spread. I think that spread the point spread is way too low.
I agree.
Here's Missouri since September 24th last year. 14 points, 22 points, 17 points, 17 points, 23 points, 17, 24, 14, or no, 45, but that doesn't count because it was New Mexico State. 29, 17, 35 against South Dakota State, or South Dakota, and 23. I mean, so they topped 24 points 3 times in now 12 games, 11 games, something like that. If Missouri's going to win this game, Kansas State can't score 24 points. I mean, that's all there is to it. If Missouri's going to win this game, it has to be super ugly, like 21-20. I've got K-State 27-17.
I got Kansas State 34-17. I agree, Gabe. Not a lot of scoring that's going to be going on the Missouri Tiger side. If they do score a lot of small points, it's going to be the defensive side of the ball. I'll say that.
Right,
I was going to say, before I thought you were going to sign off, I need to say his name was Christian Duffy because I'm going to get yelled at for getting his name wrong. I'm literally going to get yelled at, and I wrote it down too. So
You got it.
I think Missouri needs a non-offensive touchdown to win this game.
Absolutely.
I was
Maybe-
thinking that too, actually.
Maybe a couple. maybe
Maybe
a
like-
couple of them.
A lot of them.
Maybe some
Maybe-
safeties.
Maybe some punt return touchdowns. Everything that can go right on special teams. Everything that can go right on defense, and move the ball a little bit on offense. Harrison Mevis can't miss a kick. I'll put that out there as well. That also needs to happen for Missouri to win this game. But I apologize. This got so somber of a podcast for you guys. I don't think you don't blame us. Blame what we saw on the field, because that's what you should really be blaming. Don't divert your energy to us. That's a red herring there.
Your side, your verbal expression before you picked this game was almost the exact same sound Eli Drinkwitz made when I asked him how close he thought his team was to what it needed to be.
It's still Monday. Everyone's still sad. They'll be fine tomorrow.
Still in the morning period.
Yeah.
It really is. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Mizzou. That's who here on KC Sports Network. For Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson, I'm Tucker Franco. We will check back with you next week. So until then, we'll talk to you later.